Welcome everyone to Country Education Partnership's free professional learning series. I'm Shane Matheson and I'm stepping in for your regular host Brendan Ryan, and I'm really looking forward to sharing the session with you, which is on alternative education settings. CEP acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognises the continuing connection to land, water and communities. We pay our respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to elders past and present. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into the main event. The session will be 1 hour in length and finish by 5 o'clock. The program is being recorded and will be available online, as are all of our past sessions. During the session, if you have any questions, please pop them into the chat feature and we will look to address them in the discussion part of the session. And at the end, there will be a short survey that we ask you to complete. I would now like to introduce Marc McClay, the CEO of Country Education Partnership, who will facilitate the session. Over to you, Marc.
Thanks, Shane. Good to see everyone here. Some familiar faces. Great. Just a couple of CP items. The Energy Breakthrough event entries opened for that last week. Had 188 teams already registered from 66 schools. Longford Primary School in Gippsland and Sidra Gardens in Narrabri are two brand new schools, never been involved before, so we're excited. And Norwood International High School from South Australia are coming back. I think they finished between 4th, 5th, somewhere around there, first time around. So come back and have a crack. And out of those teams, there's 15 robotics teams already entered. So, and we are splitting that this year into primary and secondary on 2 different days, given the popularity of that program. So we expect that to double in size. Lake Bolac, the new school, specialist school in Colac. It's not Colac, Lake Bolac. I'm looking to enter P12 for the first time. So we're looking to get them involved. Just another reminder, our dinner, rural education dinner and forum are up next week, even though the dinner closed technically yesterday. Please contact us urgently if you still want to come. If you're watching this video in a week's time, might be a bit late. But yeah, please, if you still can, we have an amazing guest speaker, an amazing young singer who hails from Mansfield, who has an incredible voice. So it should be a brilliant night, and the forum next day also promises to be fantastic with a range of speakers, including those from the New Zealand Rural Schools Leadership Association. We are really excited to have, and I am hosting them in the Northeast next week as we go touring around a few schools, visiting schools there. So really excited with that international link and more international news to come. We've had I think I might have mentioned last week, our first meeting around clusters with the Irish Education Department. And it looks as though we'll be linking into the Spanish Education Department too. So very multicultural, and we're excited where those opportunities might lead us. And those who love a Guinness will certainly see the value in that relationship developing further. Just to add a bit of humour to the day. Shane, am I continuing on?
Yes. Yep.
Beautiful. Thank you. So today's session split into 3. In a moment, I'll introduce Marc, who'll be introducing Tanya. But we'll also hear from Marc later on. And in the middle of those speakers, we have a special person from Mallacoota, P12 as well, who we're looking forward to hearing from, and I'll be introducing her. So without further ado, Marc Westgarth is the leading teacher of professional learning and growth at Diamond Valley College, but he also has an extensive history in the alternative setting space. So with that skill set, compared to mine and the primary based, Marc, you are going to introduce Tanya and look after the first session. So over to your very capable hands.
Thanks very much, Marc. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to introduce Tanya Watts from Charlton College, who's their Flexible Learning Options Co-ordinator, and he's going to talk through her flexible options out in the northwest of Victoria. Good afternoon, Tanya.
Hi, Marc. Thanks so much for having me today. Great. Yeah, it's really great to be here, and it's a really good opportunity to be able to talk about the program. We're pretty unique in what we do. I guess I'll just get started.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shall I share my screen?
Yes,
Maddie?
please.
Yeah. Okay, I need to press that. Is that working? Yay! Yep. Awesome. As Marc said, my name's Tanya Watts. I've been the coordinator here for the Flow program at Charlton College for the past 9 years. The program roughly began back in 2013. I've been coordinator for 9 years. It's been a really interesting journey to where it is today. But we were basically a place-based response to the ever-growing concern about young people who were disconnected from education, and not just at Charlton College, but within our cluster. And our cluster schools are in the North Central Principals cluster. Yeah. I'll just move along. So just to be clear, a flow program is actually a transition program. So we're not actually an alternate to education. We are about education. We are to support a young person to transition either back to their mainstream school or to go on to something else, depending on where their pathways are looking at going. So we need to be across what's available in their area, what is suitable for them, and then what is also obtainable. There's lots of barriers for these young people, as you're well aware of, and yeah, what's suitable is often not what's really obtainable for them. So who is a flow student? I often get asked this question. So to be referred to a flow program in Victoria, you need to be aged between 15 to 19 years. A flow student is always going to be your vulnerable student. So they're not attending school, or maybe they're struggling really hard to attend school and there's major red flags, everything, and all the bells are ringing. The student may or may not have a diagnosis attached with them. So that might be through neurodivergence, trauma, PTSD, or just your mental health concerns and conditions. Some of them will identify as LGBTIQA, as most young people may. They may come from a culturally diverse background. They may be in state care, extended family care, living with their friends on the couch, or living with one or both of their parents. They may have a social worker if they're lucky. I very rarely see young people with social workers, and I'm not sure whether that's because where we live is really missing the services that are necessary for our young people. It could be a range of different reasons. So sometimes a young person will come with quite a few services attached to them, and we'll try our best to connect with those services. But quite often what seems to happen is when our young people start with us and they're going well, those services will quickly drop off to the point where they'll have no services, and then they'll just be left with either ourselves and their home school. So it's really important to be really across with what support they have and what's happening with that support. Yeah. I keep pressing the wrong button here, of course. So where do our students come from? So this is a small little mud map here of our area that we cover. So obviously we've got Charlton there right in the middle. We have had students before from Bort, Wedderburn, St Arnaud, Donald and Witchyproof. Hopefully not at all at the same time, please. But yes, we do get referrals from those schools. And I say that because we, as staff, do a lot of the transportation of these students, because you can imagine a lot of these students don't have access to transport or have the capacity to have regular transport. And that is often our first major barrier we have to education right there when a young person is referred to us. Yes. There are other schools in our cluster. These aren't just the schools in our cluster. We have also Birchip, and also Pyramid Hill, and out to East Loddon. Sorry, almost forgot that one. Yeah, but because of the transport, it would take a seriously long time for that student to actually get to us. So this is really our sort of circumference of where we look at. Okay. So without our program, it wouldn't be able to run without our supportive partnerships that we have. These are the backbone of our program. Like I said, we go and pick up a lot of our students. To be able to do that, excuse me, we work really closely with the North Central Learn and also the L2P program. The L2P program, our staff are trained mentors for the L2P program. So when we drive out to pick up a student for the Flow program, if they have their learners and they've passed all the assessments and they're going really well with the driving, they're able to do the driving back to school. So it's a win-win. So we're not wasting any time by going to pick them up, but also at the same time, our day starts when that young person gets in the car. So they're big days for everybody. Yeah. Okay, and of course, before any learning can happen, we need to focus on connection. That is huge with what we do. We use the Berry Street educational model as the backbone for what we do. And we like to call ourselves, I guess, a nurture-based program as well as a trauma-informed program. We do a lot of work with games, with getting outside, with doing activities together. We're sharing those ups and lows in a simple card game. Can produce so much socialisation and connection and build on trust with these young people. And without it, we would be lost, and we wouldn't get the results that we do with our young people without doing this sort of stuff. So yes, highly necessary. And we'll often break up the day, you know, if our day is going downhill for some reason, or we notice that the kids are getting a bit, I don't know, you know, they need to get out and do something. We've got that flexibility and say, let's go to the skate park. Let's grab the scooters, guys. Let's go down there. And that's what we do. But we're very lucky to have that flexibility as well. So yes, we focus on the Victorian Pathway Certificate. Now we only operate on a Monday and Wednesday. As you can imagine, the program is quite demanding for staff and for the young people as well. So we operate on a Monday and a Wednesday. Mondays are for our PDS work and Wednesdays are for our WRS work. On a Monday morning, we open up a community coffee shop, which is the Rex Theatre. And we have like a candy bar that we open up. So we've taught the kids how to make coffees. We do their barista training as well and their food handling certificates and things like that. So then they're able to do work experience, and they're all actively hands-on work experience on a Monday morning for an hour and a half, which is fabulous. So they get to meet the local customers. We have a regular knitters group that come in. It's really cute. Yeah, and the guys are going really well. Very, very proud of them. So that's on a Monday, and then on a Wednesday we look at our work-related skills, and they also do a bit of more volunteering on those days. We do Meals on Wheels once a month. We look at creating resumes and cover letters. And we also do like a project as well. So at the moment, the young people in our flow program are looking at the fairy tree project. There's a fairy tree in our primary school area that they're doing up into a fairy tree. And it's coming along really well. So that's pretty cute to see too. Okay. We are very fortunate to have the resources we do, and to tap into these resources is just unbelievable. We're very lucky to have what we do here. So we have something called the North Central Trade Training Centre here at Charlton College. It's separate from the college, but it's in the same area. It's a wonderful complex. So every Thursday, the year 10, 11 and 12 students have the opportunity to do vet subjects there. So students from the other cluster schools are bussed in that day to do this vet subject all day. So subjects include salon assistant, animal care, automotive, hospitality, engineering, beauty, community services, sport and rec, allied health services, building and construction as well. So that's a huge array. Now, for somebody like a flow student who we're looking to stretch, this is a possibility for some of them. Not all of our students would be wanting to do this or also at the capability of doing something like this. But when they are, they have that opportunity. So on a Thursday, I will sit with the young person from Flow who's doing this subject and be like a teacher's aide for them for the day. Make sure they get there, make sure that they're getting their lunch, that sort of thing, that they're understanding what's expecting of them from the teacher, doing their homework, any questions they might have. But then if they're feeling a bit overwhelmed and, you know, it's uncool to have me there, I can take a step back too. So I'm really guided by what their needs are on that day. Yeah. So currently, these are a couple of our previous flow students. We have Tyler there doing a bit of dog washing. He was doing animal studies. So he ended up completing, last year, he completed Cert 2 in animal care, which is just fabulous. And we have Eloise, and she was doing salon assistant. She left us, she was with us for a little while and then she moved to Melbourne. So she was able to pick up this trade when she got to Melbourne, which was just wonderful for her, so she could finish her qualifications. Yeah, so often our young people, they will not sort of value going back to school and doing year 12. But when you say, well, what about, you know, doing a trade and seeing if you can do a Cert 2, it's like, oh, well, I might think about that. So this opportunity is just gold for some of our young people. Okay. So with our homeschool, majority of the time the students will stay enrolled in their homeschool, which is really what we want them to do, yeah, because that's their community and that's where they're from and that's where their friends are, or that's where we want them to be connected, because at the end of the day, we don't want them to be any more disconnected than what they already are in their community, in their schooling, in their relationships. So the relationship we have with their homeschool is really, really important. So if there is somebody there who's a trusted teacher or mental health professional or even teacher's aide that can be the go-to for myself or that young person to stay remaining to be connected with that school, then that's who I'll go through. Yeah, and we help manage transition days across to the Flow program, but also we collaborate with that school with SSGs as well. So hopefully we're still maintaining that conversation with that homeschool. How can we connect them back? Obviously, is there any in somehow to get them back into school, or perhaps the school actually knows of some ins in the community, like, you know, Johnny really liked footy, but he hasn't been playing for a few years, or maybe I'll talk to the footy coach, and you know what I mean? We have those sorts of conversations, which is just really, really important. Anything else on here? Oh, yes. So the referral process for the Flow program needs to be approved by the local area approver through DEET. So you will need to go through a process to complete a Flow referral before that happens. But usually people just give me a phone call and we have a bit of a conversation before we get started with the nitty-gritty. Because occasionally we have, even though we've got kids from different towns, the towns really aren't that far away from each other. And these kids are often the kids that know each other. So we have had problems in the past where there's been negative relationships with kids that are already in the program to another kid that's been referred to the program. And it's like, oh, what are we going to do here? How are we going to work this out? How are we going to move forward with this problem? So those things really need to be discussed before the next part of the referral can go ahead. It doesn't always happen, but it's happened enough. Yeah. Oh, here's one of our young people helping count the till at the end of the day at the Rex, which is pretty cool. So this gives you an idea about what our timetable for the week looks like. So this would be a highly engaged Flow student. They definitely don't start like this, but this just sort of gives you an idea of what the potential is with Flow. So they'd attend Flow on a Monday, for example. On a Tuesday, they could do a structured workplace learning or attend their own homeschool. Wednesday, do Flow. Thursday, do VET. And Friday, again, they could do a structured workplace learning or attend a class at their homeschool. And when we try to transition young people back to their homeschools or onto a new homeschool, that's happened as well, it's often very, very small baby steps. It's a class a week, you know, it's a half a day, it's then a full day. It's really up to the young person and what they're like and what they're wanting to achieve as well. When a young person starts with us, again, we take the same consideration, how slowly to take it, how quickly to take it. It's really based on them. Some students will start, we'll go and visit them in their hometown and we'll have a barbecue and we'll bring the other kids over and we'll just kick the footy in a park and have a barbie and play some cards and have something that's really casual and low key. And then we'll invite them, come and see us for an hour. And it can be as slow or as quick as needed. So, yeah. Here's just some statistics that I've collected over the years. So we've had 45 students, and that's the breakdown of where they've come from, so where their homeschool has been. And if they've identified as male or female, and then within that, trans, non-binary, ATSI. The average amount of days that a young person has spent at Flow has been 40 out of a potential 60 days. So 60 days is what they've been, enrolled to attend, and 40 is what they've actually attended. So that's just some interesting numbers I thought I might share. We have had 3 young people fully transition back to mainstream education and finish either VCAL or VM. We've had, I think, 2 students who have tried and have been unsuccessful in finishing that. And we've had 5 students who have completed a Cert 2, which is excellent. We have had some students to go on to finish a Cert 3 or onto TAFE, and also onto some higher education as well. I've got a young person doing animation at the moment in Melbourne and another young person doing creative arts with drama over in Ballarat. So, and that's just fabulous. To see that we've had 45 students who possibly would never have finished their high school actually do our program, get something behind them, whether it's their learners, whether it's even getting their birth certificate. A lot of students don't have their birth certificate, and we've got to start there. So to have a birth certificate, to have work experience, to have a resume, all these things behind them, it's just knocking down those barriers for our country kids. Yeah. But yeah, that's my presentation. Thanks for listening.
Thanks very much, Tanya. For members of our audience, if you have some questions for Tanya, you can pop them in the chat and I'll present them to Tanya. I've got a couple for you though, Tanya, that I wouldn't mind following up with.
Yeah, sure.
You spoke about the importance of the relationships with the homeschools of these students.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what makes a successful relationship and when things are going really well? What maybe are some of the key ingredients?
Well, obviously communication. So yeah, communication backwards and forwards is really good, but also having those SSGs together, and they are really, really crucial. It still makes that young person feel like there could be a connection there with their homeschool if that's where they want to go, and that they're not shunned and there's no shame in going back there. So those SSGs are really, really important, and they're a strength-based meeting, I guess. It's not to say, well, you haven't been attending, pull your socks up, that sort of thing. It's like, look at where you have come. We're here today to help you go even further. Yeah. How can we do that? What is missing here? What are the barriers that are holding you back? So it's working together to find out, well, what's the missing pieces? What's the next step for this young person? And sometimes I don't know what that step is, and it's not until that homeschool or the teacher or the aide will say, oh, what about blah, blah down the street? They've got a job going in the afternoons. You'd be perfect at that, or something like that. And it'd be like, that's gold. That's what we want to see. We want to see these young people reconnecting with their communities. So important.
Yep. You spoke so direct earlier about the success of your community partnerships. Can you tell us a little bit more about the role the LEN play with your Flow program?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I say oh my goodness because they're just so vital. They are an incredible bunch of women over there who provide us with everything. So from our career action plan, we've got Sue Clay who does our career action plans with the young people, and she's so fabulous. Like, instead of having them on school campus, it'll be, oh, just come over to the LEN while you're making coffees on a Monday, and they just pop over and they love it because it's just like, oh, we get out and making coffees. It's like, yeah, go and have a chat with Sue. So we've got that. We have Marianne who helps us with structured workplace learning. She is such a sensitive and beautiful woman who goes well and truly above and beyond her job. She knows all the employers really, really well, and she'll say, describe, who you're looking for a structured workplace learning program for. I'll explain a bit about them, and she's like, I've got the perfect place. I've got this. No. Here's the person. They really understand neurodivergent young people. They're really supportive. And I trust her 100% because that's the other thing. You don't want to set these young people up to crash. You want them to be supported. So people like Marianne are just, yeah, she's gold, absolute gold. They also help us out with just joining the dots sometimes when we can't join the dots, if that makes sense. I don't know. I can't. It's really obscure, I know, but it's like,
no, I understand that.
They've just got the can do Yes, we can do this. Yes, we can find that training for you. Yes, we can find a barista training course that, you know, will come out and service your young people, and they'll understand if your young people crack it and, you know, or maybe not even turn up at all, you know, and that's really what we want. So yeah, I can't speak highly enough about what the LEN do for us.
No, I'm sure they'll appreciate hearing that. Thanks so much, Tanya. I'm now going to hand back to Marc McClay to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Marc.
Sorry, Marc, I think you're on mute.
I can't believe I did that. Yeah, so thank you, Marc, and thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Shane, for your input. For a question, not sure if Marc, that was your second question anyway, but we now have an exciting guest speaker who we're going to hear from. So we have Jess Van Swol from Mallacoota P12, and I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of notes here, and then Jess will jump in and perhaps factually correct some things. But I just love this story because it's such a P12 example. So, you know, around 5 years ago, Jess is teaching quite happily, I think, in the early years there at the school, and took a year off, and then came back, and a lot the language of probably unwittingly ended up in the careers area, pathways. Her role in the early years had disappeared in her absence, and she found it quite interesting that apparently she was quite skilled in this area, unbeknown to her, to the fact that she's even started some training in this area. So I don't think you'd find anywhere else where someone would transition from early years teacher to careers pathways in such a short space of time. But just over to you, Jess, just interested in the last sort of 5-6 years of your professional life.
Sure.
How for that journey, those details I've got and what that's looked like.
So I might take a tiny back step there, Marc. I probably got into teaching fairly late in my life. I was doing lots of other things in town and went and studied at RMIT, studying landscape architecture. Realised that I couldn't really use that in Mallacoota, so coming back home. Then did a teaching degree through Swinburne whilst I was working at the school doing our local newspaper, because that's all I could find to use my landscape architecture skills. I then ended up getting a role in grade 2. It was sort of grade 1, 2, grade 2, 3, but that's what happens in a small school. You jump around a bit in those combined classes. So then the bushfires hit in 2019 and 20. So I sort of kept going after that. Just before the fires, I found out I needed to get a pacemaker operation. So I got that done in November. The fires hit in December, January, and then 6 months later I had a stroke while still working at school. And on top of that, then COVID learning. So it got to I kept going because that's just kept teaching and just kept going, really. Even while I was in my hospital bed in Canberra after my stroke, I was still writing lesson plans for people because maybe I'm a bit of a control freak. So then I got back from that and lasted probably until, I think it was 2023 that I decided I need a break. On top of this, I was trying to rebuild, and I did take that time. But in the meantime, simmering away in the background was there was a moment at our school which was probably started with trauma after the fires, where we lost our principal that we'd had for a long time. We then had a succession of about 8 different principals until we have the one that we have now. So by the time I got to about, I think I was at number 7, might be number 6, and might be number 8, I just went, you know what, I need a break. So I took a year off and I did casual teaching across the border. I got my New South Wales accreditation as well. I was also an hour down the road at Can River, as well as at Mallacoota, still doing a little bit here. What I did while I was doing that was I was teaching in some secondary classes, not trained in the secondary sector, but, you know, just jumping in there because you can teach to year 8 and go above if needed in I think in the remote schools. So I was doing that, and the principal at Mallacoota noticed that I had a good rapport with the secondary students, especially the ones that Tanya, you're talking about, the ones that need a little TLC. So I came back thinking that I would just go slip straight back into my grade 2 classroom. I had all my things in the back room ready to go. And no, I was offered, my position I was offered was actually VCE VM, so the vocational major for our students that needed some tender loving care. And I also was given the pathways role as well. It was a lot to get my head around, especially a head that was still recovering. But I did it. It was a really hard year, but the thing that came out of it was I really enjoyed teaching pathways. I really loved teaching these students and watching those little light bulb moments of when they go, actually, I'd love to do that. Because in the past, I think it was something that was lacking here. And maybe that was because the enthusiasm had kind of gone from teaching it. I'm not sure. So I did do that. We finished with my VCE VM kids as well, because that really links in with the careers, especially with the workplace learning. And, you know, I could see how all of the skills that I was having started linking in by the end of the year. So then this year comes along and I was offered some training. So I'm now studying through James Cook University, so doing my graduate certificate of, I think it's graduate certificate of careers development. So I've started doing that. I've done one of the 4 modules. It's extremely difficult. Don't know if I'd want to be a student again, but I have recognised I've got a bit too much on. So I've taken a tiny step backwards and I'll rejoin that after my house is rebuilt, which is in the progress. Now, Marc, I just took over.
No,
Sorry.
all good, Jess. And before because I do want you to give us a bit of a picture on what your role currently looks like, but
yeah,
can I take a step back? Just give us a quick snapshot of Mallacoota, how far it is from things, how big a town it is, where do you go? Sounds like you cross the border for some things as well.
Yeah.
What's life
So
like there?
We're right on the border of New South Wales and Victoria, so right on the coast. So if you cross over to New South Wales, our nearest town is Eden, and then Merimbula, which is pretty well known. The other side, so that's Eden's about it's 45 minutes to an hour away. Can River is about 45 minutes to an hour away, and that's a smaller town than Mallacoota. Mallacoota, I don't know our population well at the moment. It used to be around 1,500. It probably is similar. And then after Can River, the next bigger town would be Orbost, and then you've got Bensdale, Lakes Entrance and Bensdale. So they're about 2.5 hours away, 2 to 2.5 hours away for a bigger town. Canberra's 4 hours inland, and Sydney and Melbourne are about 6. Let's just go average of about 6 hours. So pretty remote. It has got some pretty big limitations of things like when Tanya was talking about with training, it's so difficult to get people here and it's really difficult to get the kids there to different places. I actually last year had a lot of success going up into New South Wales to Bega and the University of Wollongong up there. They were great. So is that a bit more? Yeah. So coastal community has been pretty fractured since the fire. It seems to be joining a little bit probably in the last 12 months. And perhaps maybe that is because we have got a principal that is now our principal rather than having lots of others, because I think in a small community like this that your school is such a major part. And if there's a part of that that's a bit broken, then everything else isn't quite working. Yeah.
Good point. So now take us through, what does the role of careers advisor pathways support look like in not only a remote P12, but also you'd have quite small numbers up in that area?
So last year we had 4 Year 12 students, 2 that were doing VM that already knew where they were going, and 2 that were wanting to go off to university. One hasn't. She's ended up getting she's doing a support traineeship at the school, and the other has gone off to, I think, RMIT. So such small numbers. This year is a similar thing. We've got 2 that are scored VCE and 4 that are finishing off their VM. Our numbers are pretty little. In my year 9-10 class at the moment, I think I've had a lot away because they're all at their camp in Marlow for the term. But I've had 6 in that class, and in my 7-8s, that's a bit bigger. That's probably about 18. So these poor students in year 7, 8 and 9, 10 or year 9, they've all had me as their grade 2 teacher. So now they've got me as their secondary teacher, which is good and bad. It's challenging. For example, yesterday I have my year 9, 10s, the engagement as they get older, they start to lapse a bit. The 7, 8s are very engaged. They're like, yep, we want to learn. We want to know all about this. We're excited. But I guess the 9, 10s have had a different start to their career education here. And they're a bit hesitant to explore opportunities. But yesterday I got them onto, we bought the careers department, I don't know what you call it, site program, and I got them doing some virtual work experience. Now I thought that they were going to hate it, and I got feedback from a couple of kids today just saying, actually, that was really interesting. That was really good. I can't wait to do that again next week. And I thought, great. I've got a little way in so that they can find out, one of them's looking at marine biology. And so he's doing the virtual marine biology work experience. And I don't assess that. It goes to the careers department and they'll get something from them. Another one's doing, I think she's doing becoming a vet, not vet nursing. I think it's vet. I've got so many kids interested in animals at this school at the moment. She's really enjoying it. One of them, he looked at working, like your electricity poles. So he could do that as a virtual work experience. And I think that's a really clever thing that a careers program is offering, is virtual work experience, because one of the biggest struggles I have for the kids here is getting them to a work experience. We've only got so many businesses in town, and then from that, probably only a handful would take a work experience student. Getting them out of Mallacoota is a bit of a mission to take them for work experience, unless you do, I think in the past they've done, say, Melbourne immersion camps. So where they've gone to Melbourne, really checked out the city, but whilst they're there, done a 3-day intensive work experience. At the moment, I managed to get us 5 places at the Bairnsdale Hospital. But again, we've got the places, we've got the work experience, we've got the kids, but now I've got to get accommodation sorted, someone to take them, and then we've got to get there and get back. So there's all these great ideas for work experience, and then the reality is, okay, there's a whole lot more that we need to do. Yeah.
Thanks, Jess. Probably got 1 minute if there's anyone who has a question. Marc might have.
Sorry, am I muted? No. Yeah, a little question, and I wanted to pose this one to Tanya a little bit later too. If a bucket of money sort of came in from DE and there was, some resources that could support your work, what would you dedicate it to? What could be something small that would have a really big impact?
Getting training to the school. There was a big bucket of money, a magical bucket of money after the fires. There was a lot of money thrown this direction, and that dried up last year. It dried up very quickly. So things like we have the LEN, as is with the G at the front. So we've got the Gippsland LEN. They were great. But then last year, it really dropped off. This year, there's hardly any funding for transport, whereas last year there was a heap of funding for transport. So, even a careers expo that's coming up in Bairnsdale, I'm not sure if we're going to get the funding to go to that through the LEN. So there is that. Yeah, so a magical pot of money, be really handy to get training like that can come to so many places closer to Melbourne to get it here. Be it a barista course, be it your food safety, just a 5-day intensive. Let's go. Yeah.
Almost a bit cruel, Jess. You've had a taste of what extra funds can provide, but they've been taken away.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt.
No, that's okay. Thanks very much, Jess.
No worries. I'm sorry, I've talked a lot.
So, over to you, Marc, for the 10 minutes.
No worries. I'm just going to share my screen. Sorry, Maddie, can I just confirm that you can see my screen?
Yep, all good, thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, so my name's Marc Westgarth. I'm a leading teacher out at Diamond Valley College, which is in the northeast of Melbourne, and there are some of my methods on the screen. But I started my career down in the southwest of Melbourne, and it was through a really similar initiative to Teach Rural about 15 years ago. Leslie McGregor offered some placements to some rural schools, and I was a city boy, and I spent 3 years at Charlton College. And this was my boss at the time. It's a bit of a blurred photo. It's the best one I could get off the internet. That's Adam Box, who was the principal at the time. And I never forget him saying to me after an athletics day that we've got the best kids in the state. It was a wonderful 3 years. And then relationships brought me back to Melbourne. And I kind of just fell into working at Parkville College, which is right in the centre of Melbourne. So it couldn't be any more different to Terang, a little school of P to 12, 400 kids, community of about 2,500. And I'm right in the middle of Parkville with a big university population, lots of small apartments and things like that. So Parkville College is a school for kids that are inside youth justice. And I spent 5 years there. And this was my principal there. And again, similar to Adam, I remember in my interview, Brendan Murray telling me that, we have the most challenging kids in the state. And he never described them as bad kids or sad kids, just complex and challenging. But I spent 5 years at Parkville, and similar to what you said a little bit earlier, Tanya, had never heard of trauma-informed practice, but Brendan said, we're going to ask you to do a few things that do seem counterintuitive, but we're really going to pump some professional development into you to just, build your understanding of teaching through a trauma-informed lens, and lots of coaching and lots of demonstrations. So I had 5 wonderful years there. My first 3 years were teaching inside the precinct, but we had lots of students from all around Victoria, rural communities, remote communities, and from the city centre that once they left, had no education places to transfer to. So we actually set up a little flow of about 20 students outside the front of the Youth Detention Centre in Parkville called Park Street. And I spent 3 years there as the campus coordinator, sort of setting that up and just helping students transition into ideally state schools or, if we could, further education and training. So just over the next couple of minutes, I guess I'm just going to share a little bit about some reflections from working in flexible learning organisations. I guess the big thing that I took away from Parkville was self-care. You're working in an environment with, a lot of young people that have witnessed some, quite traumatic experiences. And there's a lot of transference that can occur. They can obviously sometimes project other relationships onto the people that are working with them. And Parkville College made a really big point of being proactive about self-care. And this is something that I had to fill out in my second year. My kids aren't involved in this plan, so I'm guessing it's about 9 years ago, but I've still had it saved on my hard drive. We would do things like fortnightly supervision meetings where the team would meet with a psychologist and just really talk through just any issues that were coming up in working around people who had suffered some trauma. And 9 times out of 10, most fortnights, nothing would come up, but occasionally something would. And it was just a great space to kind of, make you aware of it and ensure that, you weren't taking that work home. But you can Google self-care plans and lots of complex things come up. But this was my one. And it was just really what energizes me in my work, in my relationships, and my hobbies and interests. And it sounds pretty easy to put something onto paper, but the big enabler of it was sharing it with my colleagues. So I had a team of 8. We had 60 teachers all up, but in my team we had 8. And what people could do is they could check in with me throughout the week and ask little things like, hey, Marc, have you spoken to someone in your family in the last 48 hours? That was something that was pretty important to me. Or it might be, did you get to cricket training? And if I answered no, it helped me just be aware that maybe I haven't got any balance in my life that week. Or alternatively, if I did seem like work was becoming a little bit stressful, it was a really safe and easy way for them to ask me some prompts around things that I was doing, and if I wasn't doing it, the team were really great in thinking, okay, well, what is it about work that's stressing you out, and how can we help you out to make sure that you are doing those things, not just within my work but outside of my work that really help bring balance back. So anyone working around young people that have experienced some trauma, I'm a big advocate for self-care plans. After Parkville, I moved to a school in Broadmeadows called the Gateway School. It's kind of similar, Tanya, to your setup. We were attached to a local high school and we took kids from all around the northwest of Melbourne. And that's just a picture of the current website. But I guess a few things from my experience in flows, sometimes you can think that, we have to save kids and there's so much that's outside of your control. And I think when I dropped that mentality of I need to be everything for this young person, it really sort of helped me move through that expectation of having to do everything, or wanting to do everything is probably a better way of putting it. And also that idea of teaching kids. Tanya, you made a really good point earlier that these kids have really unique needs, and I think the point I want to get across is, all kids are unique in every school, but they've all got really unique needs. And sometimes what is success on one day or where you start will be very different from a kid who's also in your program. So just recognizing that, there's so many different entry levels for young people. I think goals for students are incredibly important. Early days, young people come into a flow. I think it's never too early to set some goals. And I think where they fall down sometimes is when they can be really big, big sort of long-term goals. Sometimes it's really okay to start small and really short-term. And I guess the important part is kind of monitoring that and reviewing that and constantly revisiting them. And, once a goal has been achieved, then you can move on to the extension part. And that's probably where I've seen some of the most success happen in some flexible learning organisations. Tanya, you spoke a little bit about care teams. And, when I worked at Parkville, it was amazing how many people were connected to a young person. And I experienced some similar things to yourself. Sometimes you've got some really experienced teams and sometimes you've got some really inexperienced teams. And it can be challenging working with them. But I think where they've been most successful is, lots of communication, really trying to connect people back with local supports and I guess really being on the same page and having a really clear understanding of what the goal is for the young person working with you. So care teams has been, I think, just like your community partnerships, they're a really important piece of the puzzle. And I guess finally, just, for my own development, everything's intentional in teaching and learning, but I think working with young people who have experienced trauma, so much has to be intentional. I think it's so much that I've brought back to my own teaching within the classroom. So it's just been, looking at everything through a trauma-informed lens and transferring that to other aspects of my work and now working in a mainstream school. There's not much I do different. So it's been some wonderful professional growth, spending some time in flexible learning organisations. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm just mindful of the time. Happy to take any questions, but I also have a couple for you, Tanya, if you wouldn't mind fielding them.
Yeah, I'd love to.
All right. So I guess you said you'd been working at Charlton for 9 years in this capacity. Was that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What, I guess, across that 9 years, I've no doubt you've tried lots of things. What's been a really big learning across that time? What maybe do you do a bit differently in terms of how you started out to maybe some of the things you do now?
I came from a background, I was primary and secondary trained, but when I graduated from university, I went into a primary school. Before that, I did some work for a planetarium, which was really crazy. And I did some, incursions and things like that. So that was a bit different. But then I did work in a primary school and I worked at Navarre Primary for about 3 years as full-time and then a couple of extra years after that for part-time. And then I had a break and then I got the job at Flow. And I guess when I started at Flow, I felt incredibly insecure. I was insecure about who I was as a teacher and if I was going to be able to manage any of this. The principal at the time, Kelvin, was just amazing. And he had utmost faith in me, but I didn't have any in myself. He could see all my strengths. And I frantically, for a few years there, just went from one book to another person to another book to something else, like just trying to grab and clutch onto anything I could that would give me some insight into how to be a better teacher. But really, I really needed to listen to myself a lot more than what I didn't do during those times. I think, and the kids taught me so much about what I needed to know, came obviously directly from them. So I guess that's kind of was my biggest learning during that time of being so insecure. I still am insecure, but not to that degree. Yeah.
So with that, we're probably about 30 seconds for this one, but with, I guess, feeling a lot more confident now, 9 years into the role, any new initiatives for the program that you're currently working on?
Sorry, what was the question?
Any new initiatives within the flow space that you'd like to maybe have the opportunity to pursue in terms of your young people?
Yes, I would like to actually deliver barista training on course and food handling and an RSA, so we're not relying on other people and doing that, all of that. So we can then do that, because we've set up the coffee shop, which was my dream, and now I'm like, how do we get this training here now? So I did my Cert 4 last year. So now the next step is just to, get up to speed.
Thanks very much, Tanya. I'm going to hand it back out to Marc.
No worries, Marc. Thanks heaps.
Thanks, Marc. Thanks, Tanya. Thanks for everyone today. Before I hand back to Shane to finish up and promote next week, I will just mention the session in 2 weeks' time where Adam Fraser, part of the session, he will present the key findings from his report around secondary traumatic stress for staff. So I think that links really well with today. And if you do get time, just stick Adam Fraser secondary stress report, and you'll find some summaries there, which would be a great lead up to this. And I haven't had a coffee today, so thanks a lot, Tanya. Now I really feel like one. I'll have to go find one. Over to you, Shane, to wrap up today. Oh, you're on mute, Shane. Wasn't just me.
Thanks to our presenters, Tanya, Jess and Marc Westgarth. Really appreciate your contributions in this really important topic. A couple of reminders, there is a survey link in the chat. If you could complete that, please. The session is recorded, will be online soon. But next week's session is strengthening numeracy and mathematics in middle years education. It's a special presentation that will be led by the Mathematical Association of Victoria, so a good one to tune into. But other than that, thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at future PD online sessions. Thanks everybody.